So hopping in, it is going to be a Malian HRE showdown. An interesting clash as well, considering that so far, the Malians have looked toxic. They've looked nigh on unstoppable. We've rarely seen a solution, a good answer to them. And, well, the man on the Malians in this matchup is one of the guys that led the charge in that regard, right? I think we can all recall the damage that Vortex and Lucifron especially were able to do in the round 1 and round 2 with this Civ. I'm just going to resize this a little. I think that's a good enough size. Because I noticed you guys started saying things. I don't want you to miss out. I might have to rethink where I put that logo, actually, because that's going to probably block someone's researches. But let's get to it, because on the other side, Wham, we were talking about how the Malians feel a little bit busted right now. Apparently, Wham's solution is to go to the HRE. And an interesting opening, right? Going into the Spearman with a Dark Age Rax play. Quite surprising, but not the worst of ideas, right? You should be able to get across. You should be able to harass the eco area where you've got all these houses set up in a pit mine. And the cool thing about this play, coming out from Wham, as 1 second, I just remembered, I need to rebind to my obs. Otherwise, I'm going to drive myself mad. You guys will be rewarded for it, because now we can check vision. The cool thing about this play out of Wham is that this is what I call gameplay variance. When you play a Civ like the HRE, there are expectations upon your Civ. Castle Ace Rush, second TC, into the Lake Castle. Greed, 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 greed. Right? If you spell badly, you can actually spell greedy with HRE. And it kind of fits. But what's happening here is very interesting out of Wham. He's leveraging his better eco in the very early phase of the game to push Spearman. And the cool thing is, because he has such a powerful eco in that 40% booster as the HRE in the early game, it hurts his timings less than it would other Civs. It's similar to the reason why Mongols are able to make that Spearman spam with the stone passively producing to kind of offset the initial cost. Plus the fact that they can burn bounty in the enemy base to pay themselves back even more. So cool idea. You see him, he is splitting up. So if we check the vision, you can see he hasn't got eyeballs on yet because he's been busy picking up a few sheep to bring back home. But now that he does snoop it out, we'll be able to move in. And Vortex did just scout out what's happening here. But the problem is when you play Malians like this, you invest all of your initial wood into the pit mine, not to mention straggler tree, into the houses. So you actually don't have a way of getting a Rax to counter this play right now. It's a great idea by Wham. And people asking who gets the slap for the $100 dono. My partner is going to come in and slap the crap out of me. She's never slapped me before. Not like that. But it's not going to be a held back one, right? The expectation is she's going to full swing. And I don't think I've ever been like full swing slap before. What can I say? I'm just a gentleman. But Vortex is going to be going up the Saharan trade network. Quite a defensive one. So there is still kind of a risk that you could lose 1 or 2 of these houses. But this is a cool element of what Wham's done here, right? This is already where you see kind of a worth element to this Spearman play. After the fact, you're still going to have 6 spears, but in the meantime, although you did invest 480 resources, you've now forced Vortex to forgo getting his hands on a free 75 resources per minute via the Mansa Quarry. That's no small deal, especially when we go back to the point we made where the HRE can quite easily afford this initial investment compared to other Civs. I think that is, yeah, you can see Wham, he's trying to go deeper for the other house before his time runs out here. The way he's lined this up, he actually might take out 3 of the houses. That's another investment to consider, right? That's 75 extra wood that Vortex now has to reinvest, not to mention the extra passive gold he misses out on from the pit mine. Looks like he will manage to get the tech up before the 3rd goes down at least. Well, he did stop at 6 spears, and it's not a bad idea, right? Because by going spears like this, you've now disarmed a potential play, a popular one for the Malians, which of course is to go into the Warrior Scouts and possibly the Sofas. Now he's going to think twice about that. And he probably was a little bit reluctant to fully rely on it when you're up against the HRE anyway, right? Like they are this Civ that have the faster moving infantry eventually via the marching drills, but seems like Vortex is unfazed. We are going to get the stables drop. So showing his clear intent. Meanwhile, on the other side, as to be expected, we are going to be getting the Arkin out of Wham. And you notice, it doesn't look like a sexy Arkin, and that's because this spawn is Arkin Mahat. I mean, there's no actual good option. He could have put it out on like the golden stone, but as we know, whenever you go HRE, you tend to prioritize wood. The reason is, wood is kind of like the lifeline to many different builds as the game goes on. There's also the fact that you're always going to need wood. No matter what your goal is, right, you need to build new houses, you need to build new gathering buildings. And on top of that, by going onto the wood line, you can eventually flesh this area out into farms. And the reason that's important is obviously you want to have your farms buffed here. Sure, you could place them out near the gold and the stone. But the logic is that by having your wood buffed as well, when you think about the conversion point where building a farm becomes worth it, if you have both the wood supply and then the farm placed underneath the Archon, the time to return your investment is much lower than if only one of those variances are in there. So it's why I very often just see these amazing spawns, and I think we've all seen it. Archon still ends up placed near basically just a tree line and barely a berry badge. Even on the center. Warrior Scouts have arrived, and Wham! He's making the best of the situation, but he can't pinch. Oh, and this is infuriating. Just look at the heal. Instantly kicks in for him. And this is the thing. Wham now just has to get back with the sheep. He's going to have to take a wide angle here. Needs every little bit of food he can get. It's difficult as well. Remember, those Warrior Scouts, they move notably quicker than your own. But you should be able to make it. Vortex knows not to dive, right? HRE is one of those civs you can't dive the TC against. We've seen Malians effectively dive against multiple civs. Main ones that come to mind are the likes of the Delhi of the Bassets, and that's because the villagers aren't near the TC, right? They're usually off near the berries. With HRE, you know they're going to be on the sheep, right underneath their TC, and you know the Archon's always close enough that they don't have to come away from that town center until they exhaust this food supply. Meanwhile, Vortex. Oh, you are a cheeky git. This is... I mean, this was quite early to be doing this in this game. But he feels enabled after he saw that Wham was harvesting the stone for quite a while. So understands this is a double TC HRE play. So you're going double TC on a civ that typically doesn't go out into mid-map aggro anyway. Very confident that he's not going to get blocked out in this trade. And for good reason. I also love the fact that Wham isn't hesitant to send out the scout again. This is a critical element of what's happening. We talked about this idea of like variance gameplay and expectations. When you're a Malian player and you build 2 Warrior Scouts, the expectation is that your opponent cannot scout. If they do, they're going to lose that scout. It's the same as when you see your opponent builds like 4 Horsemen. You know your scouting days are kind of over. But Wham, being the crafty bugger he is, he manages to wiggle his way through, and he might be able to snoop that critical info. He catches the trade at an early point, and instantly you see the response. Wham! Now doubling down on the aggro side, even now building into the men-at-arms. He's getting ready to block out the greed. Man, that small detail, that one scout on barely any HP, coughing his lung up on his last breath, he still goes out and makes the brave play. I love that from Wham. You know, it's something I always talk about, proactivity instead of reactivity. Obviously, he has to react to this play, but it's enabled by his move out onto the map to get this vital info first. Well, F's in the chat for Scouty as he does give over his life. You hear that from the wolf. He's sad. He didn't want to watch this scout die. For once, he wanted the Malians to be the ones suffering, but don't worry, little wolf. They might yet still. Horsemen are being added in by Wham. Needs to be careful with the initial spears. But one horseman here can actually just clean up 3 of the archers, so Vortex will want to be a little bit careful about this. Also, checking back at home, we haven't got a blacksmith added in just yet, but I expect that by like 11 minutes. Considering the amount of infantry that Wham's pushed, it can be a valid investment. But I'm expecting on a delay because, first of all, he wants to get enough horsemen to chase these traders. Then the next step is, do I hang around a feudal? Do I rely on more infantry? Or do I simply just go for my castle age timing? I'm still only 1 prelate, man. I'm always surprised by this. So many HRE players at the highest level, especially when you have the second TC, it's worth investing in a prelate, right? Like 1 prelate is 2.4 villages worth of gathering rate because, of course, they can buff 8 villages up for an extra 40%. But so many players either forget to do it or just don't want to. I think part of it is kind of like, you know, the ease of the alternative, right? If you have more prelates, that's more micro. That's more things you have to pay attention to. The game can already be overwhelming at times. So in which this many horsemen should be able to overwhelm against the archers. Problem is sticking on top of them, especially with the sofas now coming out. Vortex already up to 4 of them. Remember, these are pretty beefy boys, 155 HP, 2 armor in each category, and they hit hard in return, is the problem. This is where Wham will realize, okay, if I want to contest this for realsies, I am going to need to add in more spears. No, I didn't mind like the one men-at-arms just initially, just to kind of like probe, see what's going to happen, but it does feel like this is the type of situation where, you know, there's a risk you build the horseman mass too fast. I don't mind it here for Wham, though, as long as he starts adding in more spears around 10 to 12 horsemen. The reason is that at that point, you get enough to give a hug, as I like to call it. Right? When you have 10-plus horsemen at this point in the game, you can run past your opponent and body block their retreat. That's very important against these archer masses. It means they just get wiped out. Because even the spearmen that they are meant to counter can then gap close upon them. And you guys are not wrong. There has been a cycle of Malians going good, bad, good, bad. I mean, really, the way it's worked out is they get added. People think they're bad because they haven't figured it out. Then they're good. Then they get nerfed. Oh, they're bad again. But instantly, people figure out a new build. I mean, that's the crazy part. Like, in a lot of ways, the Farimba nerf helped the Malians because it helped players discover what I would say is an even more absurd build for them. And it's one that relies pretty heavily on this sofa math. Horseman. Trying to probe a fight here. Now, if Wham plays this wide, he can even look to pinch. The problem is he has to get these archers to come out far enough, right? Like, if they just sit really close to the base, really close to these choke points, it's hard to get behind them. It's even harder when you look at Vortex's vision. He's done a really good job by setting up these outposts. Not only does it increase his goal gains, it's also giving him information dominance in the area. Right? It's very difficult for Wham to find a free way in. Problem is that this pacing, you know, there is a worry that if Wham doesn't make a move soon, that eco value the HRE usually have starts to hit her off, and this trade really starts to boom up. And that's what I'm checking, right? Like, look at the numbers right now, military pop gap wise. And you see they are neck and neck, but a decent chunk of this are sofas, and the sofas are the premium unit in these clashes. So what does Wham do? He says sofas are only a problem if you sit on them. Instead, he's going to stay far away. Will harass onto the villies, able to sacrifice a horseman for a trade. I believe he got his hands on, what was that, one villager, I think a trader as well. Maybe an extra one on top of that. Actually gets out without losing a single one of the horses. So good understanding. This is what I was waiting to see Wham do. He's playing at a vision disadvantage, but he knows exactly where his opponent is going to be. And the cool thing is, it's going to sound so stupid, but it's actually, like, when you figure out more, it's really smart. I swear. The stupid thing that I'm going to say is letting your opponent get this much trade is beneficial when you don't have vision, because it means no matter where you strike, you're going to kill something he needs, right? That's the kind of interesting thing. And Wham can afford to take that approach as long as he's not losing units, because it means that it slows down the snowball of Vortex. These horsemen are getting bloody tanky as well. You can see the upgrades coming through. Even the melee tech is on the way. Heavily damaged, though. A decent amount of return fire coming their way. And this should be the point where we'll see Wham try to go a different angle. You see he try to sneak around with the horseman. But difficult with the Donzo's now added in. The whole goal that you should have here is, you know, maybe just have enough horsemen to split into two. And then you come from two different angles. Problem at that phase of Vortex, his comp is really slow. He's got these sofas, sure, but, you know, 60, 70% of it, they're two-footed. They move pretty pathetically here. 1.25 movement speed. It's like we aren't getting much. I think this might be the point where Wham considers a tech up. You know, he can afford to invest in a few more horsemen while slowly harvesting his gold. He is in the middle of a farm transition. If he gets up to about 12 farms, he can actually afford to just push a few more horsemen continuously while saving up for Castle Age. It's not a bad idea, right? Because once you get to like 30 of these horsemen, you get that upgrade into veteran horsemen. I mean, the effective damage output, not to mention the effective HP, is through the roof here. Wham. Trying to dodge out the Donzos. We'll just torch down the market. Actually, his best option here. I appreciate that. Because remember, Vortex, he doesn't have any villages here. So that's just going to idle out the trade for at least another minute. That's a minute that he can use well, because this should be the point where you'll see Wham just hardcore go for it, right? Like, either try to dive in with your now big eco advantage of double TC with Holy Inspiration, or you simply just go for that Castle Age. Right now, it looks like Wham is intending to go for an all-in. He's added in the archers. That's going to give him access. Vortex's comp has become quite one-dimensional, I'd say, right? Just archers, donzos, not really a cavalry battalion anymore. Very dangerous way to play this. Means that if he accidentally overextends in just one fight, he can lose everything. Well, wham. On his way back in, assuming the trade has been rebuilt up. Needs to be careful not to get pinched here. Let's keep all these boys alive, but just a mere distraction while the archer's going elsewhere. And by the way, archers is a great solution for trade, remember. If you think about early units that can kill traders easily, archers can just sit here and snipe them down as they walk past. Horsemen have to chase. Spearmen barely tickle, really, because they're always just stabbing and finding themselves 2 steps behind. This archer play is massing. Quite a lot, in fact. Close to 20 now for Wham. Just be careful not to sacrifice too much. He is playing out into the flanks on the boars. You notice this is really cool from the HRE to see, and this is something you can do with a 2TC build, is pocket economies. You don't have to just stay at home. You don't have to just rely on farms. By doing this, Wham ends up with surplus wood to throw into additional archer production instead of just having to wholly commit every single piece of lumber to the farms. Vortex has split up his troops here. Now, this is interesting. This was a reasonable fight for Wham to try and take, but hesitant. A lot of injuries in that Horseman battalion. I think if he baits him out here, like we were talking about, the scout did see this, though, so Vortex shouldn't fall for the trap. However, on the flank, does seem to be under some pressure. Sofas are going to strike there. The archer's unguarded. Mistakes made here as the spearmen get scouted out far away. Unable to assist, and behind this, Vortex is now making his way up in a castle H. And, you know, he doesn't hide it, right? He flaunts the Farimba right in the face. Yeah, Wham, this is happening. What are you going to be doing? Well, I can give you an answer to that, Vortex. Wham's going to be heading up as well. And this is a really good time for him to do it. Sure, the tech up's going to come through first for Vortex. Sure, he's going to have that initial advantage. Or should. Debatable considering 12 versus 21 villagers. But even if he did get it faster, look at what's happened on the map. Wham is now starting to carve out areas. He has roam potential in the mid-map. That's very important for what comes next. If he gets his hands on 3 of these relics, let alone 4, I don't care about your trade. I do not care about your pit mines. You are going to be limited, stunted even. In fact, in a lot of ways, Vortex already is, right? He never built a second pit mine. It's just trade that gives him his gold. Trade can become quite vulnerable, especially in this situation when a bunch of your traders aren't even being efficient. Oh, Vortex, that's a big oversight. They've just been standing here doing nothing. And Wham, he even snipes out the ones that would actually bring value. Now, the question is, did Wham just do Vortex a favor? Because we've all been there before, right? We forget about something. And then, when it's stuck on our screen through force of our opponent, we realize just how stupid it looks. I mean, that's 11 traders that are not doing real trades. In fairness, it's 11 traders in a giant lump of 34 total. But it still is a decent chunk missing from his war chest. Not for Wham, though. Wham. Well, he's teched up. 1 relic on the way. Second one will be a quick banker. He still has the ability to play for at least 2 more after that. The 5th one is quite close to Vortex's base. And I do think this is a 4-relic game for Wham. Like, Vortex is not coming out of his base. You can see by his comp, he has no intent of rushing out either, right? Like, a good kind of sign on whether a Malian player is going to aggro or play turtle is, does he have cavalry? Does he have a decent amount of cavalry? The answer is simply no. Vortex is trying to fix that now, but instead of looking for a way to break the mid-map control that Wham has, he focused on turtling first. And that's why you see, between the Donzos and the Archers, that's 50 of his military. Now we'll begin the wall in, even leaving the relic outside. Something that Wham will be smiling about, because he's now making his way over for a greedy one here. And, oh, does he even sniff it out? No! If Vortex had built that wall quicker, he would have pushed his Donzos to the right more, and they would have seen that. That wall now is being rushed up. Vortex doesn't know it yet, but Wham, shaking his hips and ready to pounce. Cat will look to do exactly that. Moves in. Blocks the full wall in. and also delays the move out by Vortex on the deer. Now, this is going to be important. He has plenty of gold, but now he's going to have to think about investing into cattle. That is an extra strain on Chirico when you're still only a 1 pit mine boy. Sure, we said you got a decent amount of traders active. You always feel like that could be a risk to you. Something that could still be sniped if you could not complete this wall. And he's really not completed this wall. This is a disaster for Vortex. He's distracted. He's moving his army across the mid-map and gets caught completely out of position with the villager force. So Wham strikes again. Now up to 16 worker kills in total. Feels like, 2/3 of that were traders. The rest were villagers. Wall is at least going to finally complete for him. But Wham doesn't really lose much for this, right? Oh, no, not my horsemen. He doesn't care about them. He's Castle Age now. He's got bigger things on the way. A big fight on the way to his base. Dive in from Vortex. Going to force idle time out. The villagers need to retreat. Wham has got a bunch of gold workers that aren't doing anything right now because he's distracted by the fight. Archers have to commit. Spearmen just pushing back against the sofas. And Vortex, I'm worried. I don't think he brought enough to this battle here. Crossbows are also being layered in, so the sofas are going to be counted out in the coming minutes. It's do or die for him, and it looks like he's going to die. Horsemen now arriving back at home. That's going to be enough to stabilize this assault, to make sure that Wham doesn't have to give anything valuable over. Instead, he can be the one now going on the offensive. He's building a force fast. He's adding in the siege as well. And this is going to be a big splat. Hard hitting with the mango. That should be enough to convince Vortex he's got all he's going to get. At the end of that, he only got 3 villager kills. Now, we can talk about the military exchange, but we've said, despite the fact he's up against trade, Wham's eco isn't in a bad state right now. He's got 4 relics generating an absurd amount of gold for him. He's now locking in sacred sites. And now, because he moves into siege first, Vortex can't rely on this very potent combo of archer mass plus sofas. Because, well, your archers are countered, and you don't really have sofas right now. It's almost like he donated them all to a charity store. Like, yeah, I don't like this one. It's faux leather. He's only got 6 of the lads. And that's simply not going to cut it. Especially up against the HRE, right? You can see right now, Wham is not re-booming into space, but he easily could in the coming minutes. Just needs to adjust his food and get on his way. And it's a cool play for the HRE, considering marching drills makes it much easier to kind of finesse these fights, to waste the sofa's time. These walls are making it difficult for Vortex to find a way. Now, Vortex is going to try to sneak a Malian Musafadi play. But the problem is that the castle and the outposts are going to scout him out, even if he relies on that. I don't know if Vortex saw that when he came in the base. He might have scouted this outpost out, but between the walls and the fact that Wham was aware of the potential for Musafadi to appear, he's covered his baselines, right? There's no easy point for stealth units to sneak in. Sacred sites so far haven't really been prioritized by Wham, bar the one, and that's simply because the focus Vortex brought down the center. But you're going to see that switch now. Like Wham, once he has these castles up, he can now push out in the center again. He alternatively could even think about just rushing Imperial Age. Vortex did lose a lot of troops in that engagement. You can say that on both sides, but I definitely think it puts Vortex in a more fearful situation than it does Wham, right? You can see how content he is with the layer of his base, with the natural defense lines plus the palisades. He's taken a much more confident chunk of the map. Whereas Vortex, he took his corner. Sure, he's got his trade. He's always had his trade, but it's not the greatest of trade, right? Even for the Malians, 78 gold. Obviously, you're going to get the extra tariffs coming through from the outposts. There's not the full map trade length that we've seen brutalize people when they face the Malians. Wow, is now starting to just kind of knock on the doors, right? Check if Vortex is home. Vortex, he's starting to move out for a bit more map control like we were just talking about. And that's very important, right? Wood is going to become a critical ingredient for him when you consider what his comp is. He's going into the spearmen. He's going into the archers. Like, it adds up quick, especially when you consider the Donzos are more pricey in that regard, right? You pay the additional 30 wood. Flash comes in. Not many spearmen here from Wham. A gluttonous play. He's going to be forced to retreat. Mango shot's going to come in. Needs to be careful in the retreat. You don't want to give over the siege unless you get maximum pain in return on the Vortex. Heavy shot out and slow on the dodge. Vortex takes a heavy hit. Mango looks to back up. Has reloaded and could go for another shot here. The start step from Wham is good. Notice how he delays his retreat to always body block against the charge of the Mango. Still can't get that maximum hit against those the archers, though. Sofamas still looking decent. You know, they have got the imported armors, not quick to full. More crossbows are finally being added in. And Vortex is going to get the bad news about the keep and the TCs. This is the problem for him, right? Like, he takes a good fight, but now because everything that's melee and everything that can torch is dead, he can't do anything as a follow-up. His archers have to think about leaving. Leaving. Vortex once more. He's actually going to head over and start addressing the outposts. Behind this, of course, you know, the board's already been exhausted, so all the eco for Wham is behind his base. If Vortex wants to do significant damage, he can't just park himself here. He needs to go deeper. The problem is, just by parking yourself here, you look at the damage being done. E-Repairs gets wasted, but he thought he could take out the town center. He was dead wrong. I mean, he's going to just get mopped up. Mango might make it even quicker. Vortex, if there's one thing you don't do against Mangonels, you don't clump up. You don't run into choke points. Vortex, that was not a confidence play running past that choke point. That was just desperation. A necessity, in fact. Vortex. Behind this, he's now being forced to set up farms. That's going to idle him out in terms of eco for a little bit. That's going to slow down the Sofa reboot. Meanwhile, Wham, what a job he's doing with these archers. I mean, I'm impressed. The fact that even when he's up against Sofas like this, he says, yeah, just mass archers is the play. Adding a few crossbows, a few spears here. But if he wants to push this many archers, he can't afford that many Sofas. The read is perfect from Wham. Villagers were trying to move out for that keep. They are going to be pushed away. So it looks like Vortex was wise to what might be coming. But Wham's got more shots to fire here. You can see he's hard on the big stone outcropping. If he gets a little bit of wiggle room here, he'll start establishing those castles. And Vortex is yet to add siege in. So no real great solution to the next few minutes of HRE gameplay. You can start to feel how Wham is holding this hostage now. We saw what one Mangonel could do in these fights. Now it's two. Springwater as well. You can see the Wham's a little bit paranoid about the opportunity for Vortex to hop into siege. But, you know, he must have a sneaking suspicion that it's just not feasible, right? Think about the amount of archers that Vortex keeps building. You can't easily afford to get into siege when you're investing that much wood elsewhere. He's going to try now. And this creates his own problem, right? Like, you know you need it, but now it's going to slow down your archer production rates. You can see his wood is not great already. His farm's also... where are the village? Okay, this is a bunch of issues in itself. What does he do with this? Like, I mean, he's missing a mill. He's missing several farms. We already know his trade isn't returning that much. He does at least stop the castle going up, but can he even get through quick enough here? Torch through looks good. Response is swift from Wham, though. He will still get the castle up, and it is on the stone outcropping, so that's an extra keep and a half for him. Shout out to Fast Cat. I see you come through the raid. Appreciate it. I think we can all appreciate a bloody good Elsback game, because that's where we're at here. Wham, he goes far out of his way for it as well. 30 villagers onto Vortex's side of the map. And Vortex, it's starting to look like it's falling apart here, right? Losing map control, hasn't got efficient trade, hasn't got efficient farming. There's many things that are making me uncomfortable here. I mean, the only upside for Vortex is that Wham may actually make him aware of what happened back here. Just like he did with the traders before. Get eyeballs on. And shout out to Canopy. I see you coming through the donor. Remember, folks, all the money via those charity links are going to be going to charity to help hospitalize kids potentially become the next Age of Empires 4 Pro if they choose. Vortex gets a breakout. But where can he go here? Wham has not made himself easily penetrable. An unbreachable chassis battle, if you will. There's no simple way in. Vortex is going to try to force it, though. Breach down the center. Really his only choice here. Walls on the flanks. Keeps as well. Like, the only funnel point he has to go through is where this TC is located. And that is not an easy way to get in. Ignore that. This is a tournament. I just haven't updated the bracket. It's the Golden League 3 for those just tuning in. This was an interesting clash between Wham and Vortex that happened on the weekend. A question that I needed answered. Are the Malians unbeatable? Can the HRE slay them? We're going to find out because Vortex, even though it's on a delay, is surging. Look at the sofa count. 20 already out and 20 more in queue. Wham has upgraded, though. Elite Archer status. Sofa's going to keep aggressing in. It's hard to stick on top of him like this. The Marcher Drills does allow him to quickly disengage. But he's now playing into static defenses for the HRE. He's diving past the reinforcements as well. Do not be deceived. The army you've seen make it past this, it's not going to be reinforced to the same level because you're going to take heavy hits on the way in. Behind this, Vortex, he's not looking weak. He's making his way up. Fort of the Huntress is on the way. Vortex starting to bulk a little here before he bows. Archers have to back away. Lots of gold just being gathered by Wham. I'm expecting a premium transition. We already see more seeds being added in, the Culverin as well. Still Vortex just running that same 1-2 punch. Remember, you can't just kill a few villagers here to end the HRE game. He's got 4 relics. He is playing on a free TC configuration. TCs are not easy to kill, as Vortex keeps learning time and time again. Good old E-repairs for the E-gamers. Just look at this resurge coming out from Wham. Hard into Horseman now. Problematic for Vortex. Needs to get more of the Donzos added in. He got baited into going hard into the Springles, but couldn't reach the Culverin. This is the problem, right? Like, the Archer Sofa really is, like, that's as far as he's got in this compound, this solution, shall we say, this configuration. What comes next, really? I feel like every time we see this build, there's nothing next. No one ever finds a way of adding in the gunpowder units, right? You don't see your Musafadi boys going off. It's always just Archer Sofa. And although Vortex is trying to reconfigure by adding in the Donzos, I don't think it's going to be enough to crack it. Especially with Wham now adding in the hand cannoneers. Now, this is going to be Vortex's biggest fear, and it might be one that he doesn't realize until it's too little too late. He still has good map control, but he hasn't really ticked a box yet. He's finally going to be able to get through the town center just in the nick of time, 5 seconds out from E-repairs. But he needs more. Remember, Wham's eco all safe behind this. He's also got that secondary TC. He's pretty much at the villager count he needs in this game. Vortex knows that he needs to do more. We'll start to add in the siege. Cheeky little Wham is still gathering on the flanks as well, as Vortex continues to just have to go down the center. I mean, I honestly, I think he only just noticed the hand cannoneers, and it's probably the worst time to notice it. 9 more in the queue. If he gets this castle up, he has a staging point, but he needs siege workshops behind this. This is not enough in itself. Especially now that you're getting raided on the flank. Vortex is completely unguarded here. Those are elite horsemen. They sting. And it looks like instead of going for the villagers, is he just going to park on the trade? I mean, he very well could here. Yeah, just stay out the TC range and slaughter. Meanwhile, Vortex, what do you do now? I mean, you're pop capped. You need to lose units to defend. Slow defense for him. A bunch of traders are going to go down. Sofa's finally arriving to react to this. I wouldn't be surprised if we see Wham starting to build kind of like a proxy base over here. A few stables could do a lot of damage. Well, Vortex just learned where the 4th landmark of Wham belongs. The other side of the map. Probably felt that it was weird that he was able to breach so easily, right? Like, he would have known if there was an Elsbach influence over here. For those that haven't seen it in a while, the Elsbach gives a 33% reduction in damage taken on your buildings. But you have to be in the influence range, which is usually out to, like, here from the Elsbach. But you'd have to daisy chain it all the way back to home. Vortex. It's starting to look good, right? He's getting into the siege, although he's taking a very slow approach. He never built the siege workshop on the front side. So this is very valuable siege, right? Losing it will completely stunt your timings. And you're still being raided on the flanks. And now that you know the Elsbach is there, knowing is one thing, but doing something about it is an entirely different beast. I mean, it's a E-repairs enabled, cannon emplacement, 7.5k HP keep that takes 33% less damage. You would have to send the entire army. Bombard's trying to make their way through, but E-repairs, always a pain in the arse. Hand cannon account now up to 18. This could be a complete rout. Vortex, his army can't hang for this. He's going to be the one hung out to dry. Well, let's take out a few spearmen in response, but you see now, this is the dangerous point we were looking for. Vortex has not made any sort of real transition towards siege, to gunpowder, right? Outside the siege. We haven't seen the Mustafadi gunners once. And, you know, you start to wonder, like, could it have been the play here? Would it have been worthwhile? I think it could have. Would it have been enough in itself to win these fights? Not necessarily, but in conjunction with Sofas, or even just going for Donzos, I could see that kind of combo breaking through this quite easily. But yet, we never see them. I mean, I don't actually remember the last time I saw a single Mustafadi gunner built in a Malian game. Then again, they're usually over by now. Not really a civ that typically takes 35+ minutes to end their games. And oh man, Vortex. It was a good idea. But Wham already considered it. Castle on the backside is going to spot him out early, whittle down the raid. And just a few spearmen chasing behind is going to make it very difficult to do significant damage. The best thing he can do is just snoop out for info, get all the info he can on what's happening over here. So he knows what to do with the secondary assault. If he ever gets to that assault. I mean, he's capped out on trade right now. Like, I can't help but feel that Vortex's choice to go south is making this harder for him to reach a win condition. If he went west and secured this area, like, you know, you could see a world in which he does full distance trade, right? But we're 36 minutes into the game, and his trade has remained the length it always was. It's always been 78 gold. And it's not bad, but once again, I just think about if he had gone for the max distance trade, he could afford Mustafadi gunners right now. And, you know, whether you think gunners are totally worth it or not, you know, per pop cap investment, they are better than archers here, right? And I think that's what really matters. You know, you are constantly pop capped, but you're not able to do anything with it. Some people highlight the potential for stealth, but I mean, if you want to do stealth, it's a cool idea. You need to go into the Mustafadi warriors, which is problematic considering that Wham's already had, rather consistently had, a healthy comp of, say, 20 or 30 archers. Also, I just don't rate Mustafadi warriors that highly against anything that isn't men-at-arms from the HRE. They move too quick when they disengage, and, well, this feels like a fight that Vortex needs to disengage from. He's getting wiped out quickly here. It's the hand cannon near mass. I mean, we're up to 33 now. I think we're close to GG here. Vortex doesn't have any siege to deal with this. I mean, you can try with culverins, but that's going to take a very bloody long time. And wood, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's running out fast. At least that way, that which he can safely access, right? He already got blocked out on the east side. He hasn't taken the safe wood because he knows that's going to be his last kind of life in this game. Hand cannon is now pushing forward. Chipping every piece of wood he can before he's forced back into his base, but he knows exactly where this is going. Straight in on top of the siege. Culverins are just going to be sniped out. And although you can talk about, like, you know, cost efficiency of the fight, that only becomes relevant when your opponent doesn't have much resource to fall back on. I think we can agree that Wham isn't running out anytime soon. And, oh my god, it happened again. What is this? I mean, this is part of the reason why Vortex's food is so weak. Almost half of his farms. I mean, he's at half of farm efficiency for 4 farm clusters when you consider that he also is missing a mill here. That's a pain that you just can't afford here. You need that extra food. Now the desperation keep. Vortex needs to stabilize. At least has the boiling oil. That'll slow things down. But if I'm Wham, I might just Magano line this and go around. And we do finally see it. The Mustafadi gunners have arrived. All right, this could be a point where Vortex could do some damage, but his eco is weak. Keep that in mind. So it's going to be difficult. Castle's crawling in. It's critical that Vortex holds here. Because Wham, if he moves any deeper, the trade is shut down and gone. And right now, the only reason why Vortex is able to contest this is because of the generation out of the Frimba. But he realizes that is simply not enough. He's done it. Wham has found a way to break the Malians.